Hello, I am Mercedes Brown, Manager of Individual Giving and Events at Dallas Theater Center. One sunny day in December, my colleague and I had the privilege to witness a beautiful conversation between Liz Mikel and her mentor, Akin Babatunde, at the Kalita Humphreys Theater. The actor, the director, the writer, the legendary Akin Babatunde came to Dallas at the invitation from Adrian Hall, who was the artistic director of the Dallas Theater Center back in the late 80s. Akin made the city of Dallas his theater home, which led to his meeting with Liz, changing the path of her theater career forever. He saw a star in Liz Mikel and brought her to Dallas Theater Center, where she has graced our stages for 30 years. This relationship has grown from a mentor to a mentee to a blossoming friendship with genuine professional respect for each other's legacy. Here is part one of their conversation.
Hello and welcome. I am here to have a very important, in-depth conversation with my mentor, the one, the only, the actor, the director, the playwright. The list goes on and on. The one and only, Akin Babatunde. Oh, I'm so grateful. Don't you start crying already now. Listen, we have a very, very long history, and both of us will get teary during this interview. I want to forewarn you. I met this fabulous man in 1990. We'll get into his history and how he came to Dallas, but it's crazy how we met. I was a young actor, I was doing community theater, and I had a number of people that kept coming to me, all my friends that knew what I was doing. Have you met this actor in town? He's a director, he's an actor, you have got to meet him. Little did I know that some of the same people that we knew in common were telling him the same thing. Have you met this girl? Have you met this big girl, Liz? You haven't heard, you need to meet her. And I auditioned for him for Dreamgirls at the Dallas Repertory Theater.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna let you tell your first thoughts when you saw my big self come up in the room.
Well, even before we started this interview, I said, how long is it going to take for the tears to come? Because when we talk about our relationship and our shared legacy in the theater, specifically the Dallas Theater Center, it's absolutely monumental for me to be sitting here on the 30th year anniversary of your connection and
See you starting.
as a company member and as a working artist here at the Dallas Theater Center. And for me to have this forum to share my experience, my legacy, and I'm in my twilight years now, so the many lives
I refuse to accept that.
that I've touched, and the chief on the list is Liz Mikel, Tosha Story. These were Billy Jones. These were members of a company I founded out of the Dallas Theater Center.
We're going to get into that. I want to let everybody know the reason I asked you about the first time you saw me.
Oh, okay.
And we ended up not doing Dreamgirls, which was what I auditioned
Gotcha.
for him. We ended up doing another play.
Well, I just went
another musical.
Yeah.
And we're going to get to that because you have a vast legacy here in Dallas and beyond.
I was excited about doing Dreamgirls. I really was because I have a connection to Dreamgirl. My brother was nominated for a Tony. He originated the part of CC, and I've never directed it.
Oh.
And this would have been my opportunity to direct it.
You were there with all of that history.
I sure was.
In New York, on the red carpet, opening night, Dreamgirls.
I sure was.
Just a holiday.
But the people who were in the audience, Lauren Bacall, I sat next to Lauren Bacall. Opening night, any and everybody you could think of was in that audience that night. It was just magical.
We're going to talk about your history in New York
Okay.
and your mentors as well.
Okay.
But the reason we don't have to go on with this story. The only reason I wanted to tell it is because Akin saw something in me as a young performer, and he said, "Oh, no.
You're not gonna do. Go ahead.
No, you go on.
I said you're not gonna be taken for granted. You're not gonna be the big mama on the couch. We're not gonna work that way." And then I also told her I'm a stickler for time.
Oh God! Don't
And
start
I've
on
had
that
some
now.
issues.
Okay, audience.
I've heard something. So you will not be late in my production.
We don't want to go down that road. We're going to the road.
But that's what I thought you wanted to.
Oh my God. Well, I tell you, the reason I say that is that we ended up doing Blues in the Night.
Yes, we did.
And Akin wanted to work with me during the daytime, and he brought me to the Frank Lloyd Wright built the Kalita Humphreys
Yes, I
campus.
sure did.
And the very first place I stepped in on this campus was what we used to call Lay Studio, was where you would rehearse for your plays.
Yes,
and
it's
stuff.
right
It's
up.
now called Frank's Place.
Yeah.
All these many years later. But my first steps in this theater, you brought me here, and we went up to Lay Studio, and my head was spinning. Spinning.
Yeah.
And 30 years later, I'm still here. But I want to talk about your history and legacy starting out. We just alluded to a little of it, all of the star-studded stuff that happens in New York City.
Right.
That's where it all began for you. And
Yeah.
you grew up in Brooklyn. And tell us about your beginnings of a young artist and that time in the 70s and creating New
Well,
York.
my God, I grew up in a time called the Black Arts Movement.
Yes, sir.
And it was the flowering of creativity that celebrated the African American diaspora. And at that time that I grew up, it's a resurgence now, but there were 7 shows on Broadway when I grew up in the theater. It was The Wiz, Ain't Supposed to Die a Natural Death, First Breeze of Summer, you name it. There were 7 black shows, significant, really, really solid black shows. And the New York Times actually coined the phrase and called it the Great Black Way. And that's where I grew up. My contemporaries, the people I grew up in New York with, walking the pavements and all, were Sam Jackson, Denzel Washington, Felicia Rashad, Epatha Murkison. She and I were understudies at the Public Theater in a play that Intisaki Shange wrote called Spell Number 7. And Epatha and I, when she first came to New York, we did her first off-Broadway show together. Anyway, I grew up in a time where it was magical because you were always learning and working on your craft. My whole connection to theater is very almost spiritual, because I tell the story all the time. I was in junior high school, Nathan Hale Junior High School, and they were rehearsing a play, and the play was called Carousel. I remember that play like it was yesterday. They were singing, "It was a real nice clam day, we had a real nice time." And I opened the doors to the theater, and I went inside, and it was like the voice of God said, "Ah." And I'm serious, and I started moving to the.
Struck something
It
in you.
struck me. I moved to the front of the theater, and I said to the assistant principal who was directing the play at the time, I said, I want to be in this play.
How old were you?
I was in junior high school. I had to be 12 in the 7th grade, and she looked at me like I was the ugliest, peasy-headed black boy and said, "You will never be in this play." And I said, "You're right." Because You may be too young to know the saying, but there was a saying when I was growing up. If you're light, you're all right. If you're yellow, you're a good fellow. But if you're brown, you could stick around. But baby, if you're black, get back. And my nickname was Midnight, Sambo, Blackie. You stayed in the oven too long. Hey, oh yeah. And so I just assumed that's why I wasn't in the play. But something struck me. I knew that I had to call it. I knew where I belonged at that time. And then I went to high school, and the same thing happened. I don't know how I remember all this stuff. My English teacher.
This is theater, American theater history.
And my teacher, my English teacher, was directing, and they were working on a play called The Boyfriend. And that's what we call The Boyfriend, da, da. And I just fell in love again. And I said, can I be in this play? And he looked at me and he said, we have our quota. And you know what that meant.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that followed me a little bit in my early career. And something hit me. I said, I'll be in a play. I will be in a play and you'll read about it. Something in my courageous little spirit. And I ended up becoming the star of the school.
There you go.
But from there, I went into the fashion industry because I went to the High School of Fashion Industry.
You were a designer.
I was a fashion designer, a pattern maker, and I went to work in that industry. And when I got out of high school, there was a very big, on Fifth Avenue, place called Ashante Bazaar, where they had African fashions, and people from Upper West Side would come and buy those fashions. And I would cut the garments out on a machine. And I cut them, my mind was on a play, and I cut the garments with the neck in back.
You did the back for the front.
Right.
Oh.
And Joseph, the foreman and the designer, he said, you need to go and do what you are supposed to do. You don't belong here. And that's when me and my brother, Akin Babatunde, who is my Rock of Gibraltar, we ended up at a place called the National Black Theater. First I went and I said, Homer, come on, you gotta come to the National Black Theater. And it was in Harlem, again, during the Black Arts Movement. And there was a woman there. Her name was Barbara Ann Tier. And she was married. She had won Obies and all kinds of things. She had done movies, and she was married to Godfrey Cambridge.
Oh, we loved Godfrey.
Yes, and she became
Watermelon Man.
Yes, she became my first mentor and trained us, and I became a part of the National Black Theater. Fast forward, Bill Dukes and Garrett Morris of Saturday Night Live.
And Bill Duke of Car Wash.
Of Car Wash.
And all directing all these.
All these things. Garrett wrote a play called The Secret Place. And I went and I auditioned for it. My brother and we got in the show. And I used to do this thing called Mamie Commander every night. And at this theater was called the Mama Theater.
Oh, yes.
And at the top of the theater lived the impresario herself, Mama Ellen Stewart, the great Ellen Stewart. And she would come down every night and watch my performance from where she lived. And there was a new company being formed. And oh my God, Harvey Fierstein, Harvey, yes. Harvey was in the company, and Harvey said, Ellen loves you, baby. Every night she comes and watches your performance. You're a La Mama, baby. She wants you to come and meet with her. I said, what the fuck is a La Mama baby? I didn't know what that was. Little did I know that she would change my life. And I joined her company. I got a chance to do The Tempest. I played Caliban in a Tom O'Horgan production. You know who Tom O'Horgan is?
No, tell me.
Oh, he's the original director of Hair on Broadway.
Look at this.
And he came out of La Mama. Sam Shepard came out of La Mama. Andre Chaban. These were all people who were like who were embraced by Mama herself.
She handpicked you all
Oh.
for your specialness and your gifts.
And I didn't know. I just knew that it was I loved working there because it was, we consistently work on our craft. Unfortunately, and fortunately, I grew up in a time where working on your craft was optimum. You never stopped working on your craft, and you never arrived.
No.
And so that was a magnificent place for consistently working on your craft. And I was in the company. And Ellen produced my first play I ever wrote in 1978.
Playwright, actor,
She
history.
touched my play just like this. She said, "Why didn't you bring it to Mama?"
You didn't ask her to produce
No,
it.
because what was it? Howard Rollins was in the audience when I did it at Cathedral of St. John the Divine. All of these people who are now household names were in the audience of the first reading. And she said, "Why don't you bring it to Mama?" And she said, and touch it. She said, "This will open the 1978 La Mama season."
And put your play in the season.
She sure did. What if?
Anointed it.
Yeah, she sure did. She didn't read it, she touched it. And from there, I met my next mentor because there was a man backstage crying, and his name was George Houston Bass. And he said, "You found something in theater that Langston Hughes has been looking for all this. You found jazz in theater, and you have to come work for me." He was the executor of Langston Hughes' estate. He was Langston Hughes' personal secretary, assistant. He became my next mentor.
Wow.
He said, "You have to come to Brown University and work at Rights and Reasons Theater." So I ran to Ellen, and I said, "Oh, Ellen, George wants me to come to Rights and Reasons Theater." And she said, "I know who that is." And I said, "Well, I would love to go." And she said, "Baby, you are under contract here. You ain't going no goddamn place. And you're going to do Gulliver's Travel next show." So I said, "Okay, I'll fix you, Mama." I would wear leather pants to tech rehearsal because I worked on the tech. And then the actors in the tech who had to do tech would complain. They said, "Akin wears leather pants. How he gonna do tech?" I said, "I'm just wearing the leather pants."
Because you were leaving to go to do the.
I wasn't leaving. I was setting myself up to leave.
Oh.
And Ellen said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm just working the tech." And she let me go to Rights and Reasons. And George became my next mentor. Fast forward, there was a theater called Trinity Rep.
These are all the things I wanted to ask, and you just rolling. Come on.
Oh,
baby.
yeah,
Come
and
on.
Trinity Rep in Providence, Rhode Island. And be out working at Brown University, I loved Trinity Rep. I would go to Marion Simon. Marion Simon was the great Adrian Hall's personal assistant. And I would go every year and I said, "Oh, Marion, is there anything in the show?" She says, "Honey, we have our company. We have our company, but I'll keep you abreast."
How many years did this take place?
This, about 4 years. I would keep going. And she says, "We have our company." One day, this is like a movie of some
It
kind.
is. I'm telling you.
One day in New York, I got a call. And Marion said, "How quick can you get up here?" And I said, what's the matter? She said, how quick can you learn the part? I said, what? She said, Master Harold and the Boy. Do you know the play? I said, no. Yes, of course I do. I didn't know that daggone play. Baby, I got on that train from New York to Providence, and I learned the part of Willie. And that night, she was, oh, honey, don't worry about it. It's because one of the actors, his father had died, Ricardo Fitzwiley, his father had died. And she called another actor, and the actor said to her, she said, who else do you have in mind? And they mentioned my name. And he said, oh, you should give it to Akin. He's wonderful. He said, don't wait on me, just give it to Akin. So she called me back. This went on for about 3. And then she said, can you get up here? I said, yes. I got up there, I learned that part. And when I got into the theater, they kept saying, oh, you gotta make Ed happy. Ed Hall was the senior African-American member of the company. You gotta make him happy. You gotta make, I said, okay.
So they were pressurizing you
Oh
as soon
my
as you got
God.
there.
Oh.
Not only the pressure of having to learn this piece, travel there, you wanted this greatly.
I wanted to be a part of Trinity.
And then here, you've got to please Ed Hall.
You gotta please Ed Hall. And so I went into rehearsal, I learned that part. And Marion was like, honey, you may not be here, you know, we're gonna try this out. And Ed Hall went to her and said, he's marvelous, keep him. And I did the part. I learned it in 2 days, and the next night I went on, and I gotta show you this. This is a true story. The reviews of the Providence Journal says, last minute replacement gives stellar performance. And that's when Adrian heard about me. And
Now, for some of our viewers, you may not be familiar with the name Adrian Hall. I just invite you to Google him. Adrian Hall is responsible for this brilliant man coming to Dallas.
Yes, he
so
is.
in addition to La Mama, you look at listening to all of these companies that are fierce and part of the American theater fabric.
Negro Ensemble
The
Theater
Negro Ensemble, La Mama Theater, what was the other one?
National Black Theater.
National Black Theater, I'm sorry. Trinity Rep. And you, this is what boggles my mind. You were a company member at Dual at the same time at these theaters.
Yes,
and
I
making it
was.
happen.
Well, Adrian, listen. Adrian was the artistic director of Trinity and the Dallas Theater Center at the same time. But this is before this story happened.
Yes, when you used to take the train, I want you to talk about taking that
Oh,
train.
Lord. God, you remember that? Well, I ran a a drama department in New York. And because I wanted to be at Trinity so bad, I would perform at night. And then I would drive 4 hours up to Providence, sometimes not take a curtain call, drive back to New York and teach my class in the morning. And the only time that I had off was during the weekend. But it was like a family atmosphere, Trinity Rep. Fast forward, Adrian, we were getting ready to do Joe Turner's Come and Gone. I wanted to do Joe Turner's Come. And Adrian said, he called me, he said, darling, do me a favor. I said, yeah. He says, come to Dallas. I said, oh no, I'm not coming to Dallas. He said, I need you to do The Boys Next Door.
Why you wouldn't come to Dallas?
Well, I said, so he kept calling, and then he called. And the way let me go back to how you meet Adrian.
Oh.
Because if you go to his house for tea and a lemon pound cake, that is your initiation. And I was invited to his house, me and my mentor, George Houston Pass, and we had tea and lemon pound cake. He said, I don't have anything for you right now, darling.
In the season.
Yeah. He says, but I will find something. And he did. He found things, and lo and behold, I became part of that company. It was a family. I love it. And he said, come to Dallas. And I said, oh, no, Adrian. He said, oh, come on, do Papa a favor. I said, I don't want to go to the place that killed Kennedy. How horrible. Little did I know this would become my artistic home, and a place that I feel where I can breathe, where I have flourished and have become, helped other.
Essential.
Thank you for that. Yeah, and helped so many other striving artists. But Adrian had a plan, because at the time, the company was not diverse. Now, they did have a diverse company at the Dallas Theater Center. It was called the Janus Players,
Yes, I remember.
with Reggie Montgomery, and that was before my time. But when I came to join the Boys Next Door, the company, they just embraced me like I was one of them. They just, Jack Willis, you name it, Candy Buckley, Martin Rayner, all of them just embraced me and would mess with me. They kept calling me Yankee because I wore my cowboy boots with my pants in the cowboy boots. And they said, you're just a Yankee. And I said, what's a goddamn going Yankee? I don't want to be a Yankee. Y'all are trying to be nasty to me. But they loved me, and I loved them. And Adrian had a bigger plan. He wanted me to join that company. So when I got here and did a great job with Boys Next Door, he said, don't you want to stay and do Red Noses? I said, mm-mm. He said, oh, do Papa a favor. So I did Red Noses. Before I left, I went to Marion. And I said, Marion, I don't want to leave.
You want to stay in Dallas?
No, I said, I don't want to leave Trinity.
Oh.
I said, I can't. And she said, go. Spread your wings. You can always come back home. And I went. And it was Marion who told me to come to Dallas. And she stayed my support. I would always check in with her throughout her life. It's funny, because Adrian is not doing well now. And Jerome Weeks took me to see him because he's suffering from, an illness. And he knew me. He pulled out all of the things and said, to you, who is that? That's you. And guess what?
What?
For dessert,
You had your lemon pound cake. I want to say, I'm so grateful that she convinced you to come here. Because as an artist, as a little girl that was struck by art, my great love was dance.
Yeah.
But anything on that stage.
Yeah.
But I so connect with your story as far as what it just strikes you.
Yeah, it does.
It's like the bell tolls.
Yes, that's a great way to describe it.
Rattles
Yes,
with it. You have
yes.
no alternative
But to
and
do
when
it.
I met you because of Adrian Hall asking you to come to this place, you changed my life. Nobody's gonna take you for granted. You don't want to be the big mama on the couch.
Yeah.
You want to learn your craft.
Yeah. I
And
did.
you not only did it for me, as a mentor, you have passed that torch on. What more importantly, the mentors that you've had that have helped mold you and guide you.
Yes, they did.
You then provided that while you were a company member here, you started, there was no more Janus players, but you started the Vivid Theater
That's
Ensemble.
right,
And you
Liz.
saw a number of us.
Yeah, and
In
the
the-
Vivid Theater Ensemble was Dallas's first professional. Everybody in there mostly everybody was equity.
Yes.
And I wanted that. I wanted them to be equity members.
You were the reason I signed my professional contract. When I did that audition and they offered me the equity contract, I was like, well, what does this mean? And you said, it means that you're a professional, sign it. And I did. It means you're a professional, sign it.